This is module 29. In this module, we are trying to discuss the utilization and importance of language corpora in some other branches of linguistics. You have already understood that corpus is an important resource in all major works of applied linguistics and language technology and language description, also in dialectology, computational lexicography, language teaching, and many other domains. So in our earlier modules, we have tried to be more specific, more oriented, to refer to how corpora can be used in different ways, in different manners to address the domain-specific, subject-specific requirements where corpora has much more direct relevance. In this module, we are trying to look at those domains which were not once upon a time so rigorously based on language corpora, but now information extracted and utilized from language corpora has contributed heavily for their growth, for the refinement and improvement of the discipline. So here we are actually concentrating 4 or 5 major disciplines with reference to the tasks already been carried out: corpus and lexicology, corpus and lexical semantics, corpus and sociolinguistics, corpus and psycholinguistics, and corpus and stylistics. We will go one by one and try to understand or look into the matter how this is helping us to understand those disciplines or some branches of linguistics in a better way with reference to the corpus. So the basic advantages of using corpora in that these resources have, these disciplines or these areas have benefited immensely with direct utilization of information and data from this corpora. So field like sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, stylistics, they usually didn't depend on computer and corpora even a few decades ago. But the situation has changed. We have noted that now any area or in most of these areas can refer to the corpora to identify new areas of research, new process of research, new studies that can actually contribute to those areas as well as help us to understand the language in a better way. So, trailing back to the discussions all given in earlier modules, we want to focus in this module on utilizations of corpora in some major branches of linguistics, of description, language, descriptions of words and history of words, so use of language in the different social situations, and use of language acquisitions, use of language in acquisitions, and stylistics, others, and some others. First area where we want to emphasize is lexicology. In brief, lexicology is the study of words from the beginning till its use at present and understanding the course it has undergone from its birth to its still present day use through the meanders of time, society, culture, history, and heritage. That means we want to know how words and other concepts first evolved, first originated, then went through a lot of modifications, changes, say in shape, in pronunciation, in usage, in meaning, in sense, and how through the passing through the world this history, it has achieved a new connotation, new meaning, new significance, or new importance in the history of language study. So Lexicology is a discipline which is established as a new branch of or established branch of linguistics that receives adequate amount of attention from the people of semantics, lexicography, semasiology, culture, onomasiology, ethnology, and others. What they do actually? Lexicology actually covers a wide range of interests relating to lexical investigations and analysis. It tries to understand the few major things. We can sum up something like that. Reconstructions of original meaning of words which have undergone semantic change with time. That's an important part. And while reconstructing the meaning of the words, it also focuses on the track, on the time, on the passage through which the word has undergone meaning, undergone change in meaning or connotation. It also studies the patterns of lexical variations and change across a particular time scale. It also tries to find out how the meaning and usage are changed of words are changed over time. Also, evolution of vocabulary of a language over centuries. As you know that any dynamic language changes its vocabulary with the change of time. So lexicology tries to identify how the meaning or the vocabulary of a language has changed over time, whether increased or decreased or modified, or all kinds of things. Study of neologism and lexical loss undergoing within a language. So if a language is a living language, that we assure that some languages, some words would be lost while some new words would be generated. So this is a continuous process that goes on in a living language. The study of lexicology also tries to explore, understand which words has come, which words have died, and what kind of changes taken place in certain words which are still prevalent in the vocabulary of the language. Study of lexical borrowing and derivation over a particular time span in a language. So borrowing is an important area of lexical study because it wants to know at what point of time a language has borrowed from other languages. What are the motivations behind the borrowing? What are the impact on the language because of the borrowing? And how those borrowed terms and words are actually assimilated, have become the property of the language, or whether these have been left aside or again ignored. So this is a lot of pages, different phases of borrowing of terms in different times, various impacts, various reasons behind that. So lexicology also tries to understand all those things. Lastly, it wants to understand structural and etymological analysis of lexical items used in a language. So that provides a lot of information to understand when you analyze a word, when you etymologically identify the etymological history of a word. You want to know what kind of socio-cultural factors were responsible behind this borrowing or behind the generation of the term. What are the factors? Actually, lexicology actually is a kind of study which reflects on the society, time, through the mirror of words. So it is not only studying the words, its origin, its birth, its growth, its change, the whole course of its changes, but also it reflects on the society, on the time, on the particular phase, motivation of the people. So you, through lexicology, you get the total picture of the community, the history, culture, heritage, everything combined together to give a complete picture of the community where those lexical properties or words are used. So this has been an important part to understand with reference to corpora. Because of the availability of language corpora of different types, particularly diachronic corpora and historical corpora, or corpora of a particular time, say medieval text corpora, early text corpora, and something like that, it has been possible for us now to analyze about the origin of concepts, about the origin of words, how the words have undergone changes, what kind of impact it has created in the society, whether the basic concept denoted by a particular word has undergone changes and now new meaning has been acquired, and what have been the factors behind the acquiring of the new meaning. So I am going to give some references, very interesting studies. The direction of semantic change of some abstract nouns in English is studied with reference to the Helsinki English corpus, the Michigan Early Modern English corpus, material corpus, and Oxford English dictionary. So some studies were made to understand how the abstract nouns which are now used in English have undergone changes. As you know that many abstract nouns are having different meaning in the earlier tense, but now are used in different new senses. So this is an interesting study to know how the original meaning of the senses. I will also come to some other examples here to show how this change of meaning, the prototypical meaning, is changed with more subjectified sense, more subjectification of meaning. This also happens because we know that language or words are not going to be used in a specific predetermined contexts. It can be used at any present situation or in unprecedented, unthought for situations also. So in cases when the words are used in a new context or new situations, it may happen the original meaning of the word is altered or changed, or some new meaning is evoked. So these abstract nouns, the study shows that many of the abstract nouns in English, which are used in one sense in earlier days, now have gone through new meaning, have got new senses, new implications because of the use in new contexts. In the second study, we noted the collection of English language corpus was analyzed to verify the reasons of explain the phenomena of word loss and semantic loss in the Middle English. Another study was interesting study was taken up to study how the phenomena of word loss and semantic change actually takes place. That important study to find out words are lost. Why words are lost in the language? It's a very important question in lexicology or in social study. We find that sometimes some words are lost, some new words are gained. We also identified why neologism takes place, but at the same time we need to know why those words are lost. What are the reasons behind that? And is there any regular pattern of word loss? Is it a very systematic one, or a very well-defined pattern that regularly certain number of words will be lost? Or is there any other factors that actually trigger a loss? Suppose if I give an example that till early 19th century, because of the Persian rules, because of before the British rule came into India, so we have noted that large number of Persian and Arabic words were there in our Bangla vocabulary. But what happened after the introduction of English or British rule in India, and when the entire country was under the British rule, it was noted that large number of Persian and Arabic vocabulary were reduced and they were replaced by British English words. So this is a very clear-cut reason where you can find out because of the change of the ruler, and the language of the ruler actually controls everything. But this is one reason, but there might be many other reasons, many historic factors, political reasons, cultural factors, invasions, military aggression, and many other reasons that may cause the loss of vocabulary of language. So this is an interesting area of study, and they made the study with reference to collection of English language corpora. They wanted to identify what kind of words are actually lost, which words are actually lost, and what are the reasons of their loss, and which words have undergone the change in meaning. The Toronto corpus of Middle English and the historical treasures of Thesaurus of English and the Oxford English Dictionary were used to corpus as a corpus database to reconstruct the literal, metaphorical, and the metonymical senses expressed in different lexical fields of subcommon English words. Here, you can find out there is a kind of reconstructions process takes place where the new meaning, how was reconstructed, literal meaning, metaphorical meaning, figurative meaning were constructed. Metonymical senses are expressed by different lexical words in English. So we found that what are the factors, what are the issues triggered, and how words were used to generate new meanings, metaphorical meanings, new senses because of reasons. So they use historical corpora and historical lexicography textbooks and dictionaries to identify which words actually having new meaning, new senses, literal and metaphoric, and in which field they are actually doing that. So that conceptual expansion of the meaning of the words is an important area, and also they want to know to identify the factors which actually triggered, and also its impact on the conceptualizations of the whole world by the community. The Helsinki corpus of Middle English and a representative corpus of historical English registers were also used from historical perspective to trace the changes in word formation patterns, as well as to address the general dynamics of word formations in English, another important topic. So far we have noted that in lexicological study, emphasis has been to identify the intricacies involved in the change in meaning. We also find studies where corpus has been used to identify the strategies, the methods, the processes that are used in word formation. It is noted that a certain sets of suffixes, or affixes to be more precise, were highly productive in the early middle century, early middle English texts, which lost their significance or use in the later period. And newly, after centuries, you can find out that another new set of suffixes has come up which are highly productive in use. So if you look at the database of any language, you can find out that word formative elements, their affixes are there, suffixes are there, prefixes are there, infixes are there, inflection marks are there, tense aspects marks are there, a lot of plural marks are there. So a lot of different types of elements are there. These are basically word formative elements which are often used or tagged or combined with base forms and stems to generate new words. So these are almost known to all students of linguistics. But interesting point to note over here is that certain of them, some of them are highly productive. Some are not. Now, if you find out that there are only 2 or 3, so let me give a concrete example from here, that in cases of S is a very frequent plural marker, while others are not. Suppose from thesaurus to thesauri or syllabus to syllabi, you can find out that this particular suffix, plural marker, subplural suffix, is not productive like S, as in cats, dogs, or bats, or something like that. Now the question is, in lexicological study, why those affixes, suffixes, and plural markers are quite productive while others are not, and what made them to be productive? What was the property because of which they became so productive, and how they are productive? That is another important area of investigation. So we can find out in every language there are some word formative elements, some of which are highly productive. Patterns are quite explicit, quite productive. They can combine with almost all words and generate new types of words, while others are highly restricted in usage. We have found in Bangla also, maybe some of the Persians adjectival suffixes are very limited. Say in cases of, say, baz, dhandabaz, or say dar, dokandar, goldar, or tahsildar. So you can find out that these are less productive than others. So as a lexicologist, we need to identify 2 things: when these were introduced, when they are introduced, whether they are much productive, and how many new words they created, how many new words are included because of those productive suffixes, and if these words are still productive in the language, and if not, why they are not productive, and why some of them are highly productive and while others are not. So this is an important area of investigation to find out the productivity of the affixes or word formative elements in the language. And historical corpora particularly, or even historical text dictionaries, are useful resources to identify how these are productive, why they are productive, in which way they produce large number of words and while others don't. And at the time of generating new terms, new words, new vocabularies, what kind of morphophonemic changes they undergo, what kind of conceptual impact they create among the communities. These are also important areas in linguistic studies. Now, if you look at that Helsinki corpus of modern English, the Lampeter corpus of English, and the corpus of early modern English correspondence samples, the Michigan early modern English materials, and the corpus of Middle English used to analyze, to examine the importance of rhetorical purpose and context of in semantic change of lexical items. Here, we have already discussed that several corpora are used to identify the context, how the word meanings are changed. So, in historical document also, in these studies has been clearly shown that the scalar categorization or classifications, representational functions of words may be understood in cases of polysemous words if we can refer to the context. So, what we here emphasize here that these different types of corpora actually contribute to understand not only in the present days, in earlier days also, the context responsible for changing the word meaning. So, in lexicology, you can find out several areas where this has already happened, that people are using language corpora to study all various aspects of language. We are talking about lexical semantics. Particularly, we will look at the polysemic purpose, and we are going to utilize that corpora to understand the various semantic aspects of the word. Meaning of the lexical items is traditionally described with regard to our own intuition or knowledge base of the language. Now, information derived from corpora reveals that semantic distinctions of words associated with several characteristically observable contexts, marked with figurative, morphological, semantic, prosodic, idiomatic frames. So, in our earlier days, when people were discussing word meanings, analyzing them, almost they used to do it reference to the knowledge base in the language or their intuition, or sometimes depending on secondary sources of information. But now we are using corpora, and it reveals that there are many further factors are involved into it, like metaphorical, morphological, syntactic, prosodic, and idiomatic factors. Idiomatic frames are there which are responsible for that. Similarly, the meanings of compounds, multi-word units, collocations, and phrases are bound in context of their occurrences. So it will be not only the single word unit, but so all other kinds of multi-word units, compounds, duplicate forms, idioms, they also depend on the contexts to denote their meanings or senses. In the lexical semantics also, we are trying to understand how the corpora contributes. The most striking contribution of corpus in lexical semantics is the introduction of the fuzzy concept of meaning. That means they call it fuzzy meaning. Their argument is clear that the importance of language corpora in lexical semantics is basically the acknowledgement and establishing the notion of fuzzy meaning and semantic gradients in understanding the meaning of words. That is very important thing. In lexical semantics, we find that functional categories of lexical items are usually constant. That means a lexical item either belongs to a particular category or it does not. However, experiments carried out on categorization suggest that functional categories of words have fuzzy boundaries rather than one-dimensional. So traditionally what happens, we identify that either a word belongs to this category or that category. Either it is a noun or an adjective, either it is a past tense or it is a present tense, or something like that. So we always believe that words belong to this particular category or the other to be accurate. But when we refer to the corpus, we find that that kind of polarization or classification, categorization, one-dimensional categorization does not actually work. A word can at the same time in two different sentences. At one point in time, it can be an adverb, it can be an adjective or a noun or a verb. So this is a kind of uniqueness which we could find out. That means rather than specifying a specific one-dimensional or one fixed category to words that usually don't give us clear ideas to understand the multifunctionalities of word, if we adopt the strategy of fuzzy meaning of words, then we are in a better position to comprehend that words has actually many potentials to be used in different categories. This signifies that it is not a question whether a word belongs to one particular category or not. It's important to know that how often a word falls in a particular one category or the other. So if you find that the noun, say the word head can be a noun, can be a verb, or can be an adjective, but more often it is used as a noun than as an adjective or a verb. So we get a better idea, better understanding of the word, to know that although the word has 2 or 3 or 4 possibilities to be used, it is more often used as a noun than as an adjective or a verb. For Bangla, you can take example for say kache. Kache is basically having 4 different parts of speech, but normally it is used as a postposition rather than an adverb or a noun. So what here we say that we also like to introduce or include the concept of multiple parts of speech for words and the gradients of a word, semantic gradients, we say that in understanding the words. That means a word has possible several meanings, but more frequently, it is used in a particular sense. So find that, for example, in English, head has many different meanings, or English word run has many different meanings, but in most cases, it actually refers to a particular sense which is quite frequent in the language. The reference to corpora helps to understand the nature of polysemy, by which words denotes multiple senses triggered from various contextual occurrences. We have already discussed that only when if you say that a word is polysemous, you must ask, how do you know it is polysemous? How many examples you can cite? It's really difficult. But whenever I say that in the corpus, I get the 1,000 examples of use of a particular word, and that too in varied senses, I have some empirical data to substance my argument that the word is polysemous. So corpus has the potential to establish or to confirm whether a word is polysemous or not. Actually, also we can verify. Okay, and also we can give full close reference to the examples to show how in different contexts word is being used. In lexical semantics also, the use of figurative senses of words in language is a very common thing, but so far it is not even properly captured how all words are or not all words, but majority of the words can be used in figurative senses in the regular texts, as a spoken text and written text. So I personally have tried to design a annotation scheme where words are actually tagged with the figurative sense, and I made an estimate and a study that even in normal prose text produced in newspapers or even in normal literary text, maybe a large number of sentences are highly figurative. and many words are used quite frequently in a figurative senses. So we need to devise a technique where figurative senses of words can be marked out. So corpus is a very beautiful resource wherefrom we can get all possible figurative senses and can understand in how figurative senses are actually triggered from various lexical frames. So when we was trying to study the corpus, we can find out how corpus can help us with examples of literalness, metaphor, metonymy, polysemy, context synthesis meanings, etc. to explore the relations of figurative senses. Also, it may provide necessary information to understand the inter-annotator agreement on which those figurative senses, metaphors, or metonymies are actually constructed. The whole environment we get, whole ingredients we can acquire, analysis of which can give us better insight to understand how those figurative senses are actually constituted, formed, how the author or the speaker has embedded that knowledge base to make the words or a particular string or a particular constructions figurative in a sentence. Corpus also supplies linguistic cues for figurative usages, including studies on the frequency, their reliability, and evaluation. So we note from corpus, we know not only how words are figurative or usage, how are figuratively used in different texts, different frames, different types of context. Also, we get sufficient knowledge base, sufficient information, sufficient cues to explore the nature of figurative usages. Corpus also provide information to trace the effect to domain, genre, or text on figurative use of language. There is an important area to research to find out how the figurative usages of different constructions has a better impact on the readers, better impact on the audience. If a non-figurative text is equally penetrative, equally appealing to the target audience, similar to that of figurative text, or if figurative text has a better impact on the readers. If this is so, then why we need to also know why people use figurative constructions in the texts. Does it give them a better understanding or better communication, or does it create a better impact on the target audience, target readers? So this is an important area of research. We can find out how figurative usages are made, what kind of impact it creates, and if figurative usage has better impact on the readers than others. So corpus also supplies necessary information to design some computational models to analyze and interpret figurative usage of words in the language. So the resource, the data which is retrieved from corpus may also help to design some tools or techniques or models for automatic figurative constructions annotation, retrieval of the figurative forms, marking them out, and identify what kind of additional information load or additional semantic information is embedded. So we can also think of designing systems for the computational models to analyze and interpret those figurative usages. Finally, corpus supplies sufficient data for designing cognitive models of or to process figurative usages of the words in the text. Also, not only the computational, the cognitive model is also required to design for this. So what we understand that in the area of lexical semantics, corpus has been a very faithful and useful resource, not only to identify the semantic variations of words, also semantic variations of larger constructions, which contribute to understand the figurative usages, metaphoric usages, and many other different types of usages of the words.